Yep. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time now. The meeting is being live streamed, and a warm welcome to all of you for the third annual S. Muthiah Memorial Lecture. Almost every one of you know what this occasion is about. Nevertheless, I should just tell you this: Mr. Muthiah has been the, I should say, the intellectual fountain of our foundation. Apart from being, I mean, how famous he is in Madras or Chennai, his importance I don't have to tell you, but this is one reason we are taking the initiative in this always. But for his support and encouragement, it would have been difficult. I mean, every time we have a image of his presented here. Unfortunately, I had a system crash a couple of days ago. I lost, and now till the time to prepare one. Next time we'll have, hopefully, next year we'll have it physical, where we can meet and talk about this. So we have for our speaker, one of our own members actually. So I leave it, the introduction part of it to our trustee nominate, Dr. Ramakrishnan. Please, Ram, you take over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Shobha Vardhaman. Dr. Shobha Vardhaman did her MBBS from the Madras Medical College in 1974 and obtained a diploma in anesthesiology from the Royal College of Surgeons of England 4 years later. Ever since that, she has worked as an anesthesiologist in India and UK, as well as in large and small hospitals in Africa, Philippines, Asia Pacific countries, the Middle East, and in the Caribbean. She has been a volunteer since 2004 in humanitarian missions with Medicines Sans Frontiers, MSF for short, better known as Doctors Without Borders, in conflict zones across the globe. She was in action during the floods of Orissa as well. She is a board member of the South Asia Regional Association of MSF and a member of its council OCA, which stands for Operation Center Amsterdam. She was the vice president of the MSF Association of South Asia region for 3 years and a member of the association standing committee of MSF International for 1 year. In India, she has been a volunteer with and is in the board of trustees of Operation Smile India, which does free surgeries for cleft lips and palates. For the past 3 decades, she has volunteered with several such organizations in the country, like Bangalore-based Vishwas for Psychological Lay Counseling, Voices, an NGO for Community Communications, and YWCA, wherein she worked as the head of Urban Development Project at Delhi, besides having been a Rotarian. She has been a recipient of several prestigious awards, which include the Rennie Abraham Love for Service Award of Tanker Foundation, the Founders Day Award by the Women's Indian Association, Chennai, Woman of Substance Award 2012 by Signature TCAI, Guwahati, and recognition as the Ambassador for Peace by the Interreligious and International Federation for World Peace, a South Korean NGO. An outstanding motivational speaker, her mastery of Tamil literature is exceptional. She has also been a great admirer of Mr. Muthiah and a very avid follower of his newspaper columns. She is also, just as Captain Ramachandran said, a part of the Colors of Glory Foundation, being married to our Honorable Trustee, Air Marshal S. Vardhaman. And of course, we also know her as the proud mother of Wing Commander Abhinandan, who earned national fame in 2019 by shooting down a Pakistani F-16. Ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Ram. That was that really set a very high standard, which I should endeavor to beat, actually. Good evening, everybody. And I thank Captain Ramachandran for giving me the double honor today. And I'll tell you why it is a double honor. First of all, when I met Mr. Muthiah, when Colors of Glory started, I already had him on a pedestal because I knew he was the man from Madras Musings, and I had been a fan of all his writings. But when I saw him in flesh and blood, he looked like one, he was sitting amidst his books with a very benevolent smile, but his eyes were so keenly observing everything around him. And particularly, I felt he was sizing me up. But as I knew him thereafter, I found him to be a gentle giant. And thereby, he became a larger than life person for me, actually. And I met him again when I gave a talk on Tamil Jains at the ORF meet. And he praised me after the talk. And that was like getting the title of Brahma Rishi from Vashishta. My feet didn't touch the floor that day. Then he asked me to write about it in Madras Musings. Sometimes ordinary beings like me, we let go of golden opportunities in our inertia. Similarly, I let go of my one lifetime chance of having an article edited by him, by the one and only historian of our times. Well, we do these kind of crimes of commission due to my foolishness or my sloth. But then destiny has its own ways. Here I am, filled with gratitude for gaining this great honor to give the annual Muthiah Memorial Lecture, the man I respect most and whom I hold in awe and with a lot of affection. And every time I close my eyes, I see his smiling, benevolent face, and I feel energy coming in from him. And why did I call it a double whammy? Because today I've been asked to talk about another favorite person of mine, Mahakavi Bharatiya. The topic given for me today is the legacy of Bharatiya, the poet and patriot. To talk about Bharatiya, I think we'll need days because he's written so much. His thoughts were so many, and he was a man of different dimensions. I'll try my level best to put it into 40 minutes and see how much I can deliver in this, because about 2 years ago, when I was giving the first lecture in the series on Bharatiya's centennial memorial, I declared myself to be Bharatiya's Radha. And my love for him hasn't reduced any further, and it only grew. So when somebody loves somebody, I don't think you can stop talking about them, can they? Well, anyway, let's talk about his legacy today. The first thing I do whenever I get a topic is I look into the dictionary. So I looked into the dictionary and saw a legacy is a gift by will, especially of money or other personal property, a bequest. So what is Mahakavi Bharatiya's legacy? His works, his literature. Chellamal gave away all his works to the government of Tamil Nadu, and everybody has got it. So why are we talking about a legacy even now? After 101 years after his death, if we talk about a person with glowing praises and we draw inspiration from his words, and imagine his piercing, wise, truthful eyes staring out of those posters you see around the street corners, talking to us, pushing us, to achieve more and more, to succeed, to work, to toil, I think, and whenever he stays out from those pictures, he shakes me out of my slumber. Then I wake myself. I call this the legacy. It is not just his writings. I think if a man can do this, that is his legacy. So I was thinking, okay, these are all things that you can't quantify. What is his legacy? His thoughts, his actions, or his characteristics, his patriotism or nationalism, or his journalistic methods. But all of it got amalgamated together, and I found one position which I think is his legacy, and that is his leadership. He led us by example. Leadership by example is the ultimate. You ask any management person, he will tell you. It doesn't come by studies. It doesn't come by reading books or following somebody else. It comes from within. And that spontaneity, that truthfulness, that innate character, which made people agree to listen to his words, to follow his words, that is the legacy that Subramania Bharatiya left for us. Now, let's come to this topic. To today's topic. It's actually very easy to get distracted while you're talking about Bharatiya. One leads to another, another leads to another. And then ultimately, you're just, going like ripples and not concentrating. Bharati, the poet and the patriot. Who is a poet? As I told you, I always look for definitions. A poet who is one who expresses through his creativity, his gift of thoughts and imagination, the deeper meanings of human nature he expresses. And, he puts in perspective the relationship of self and universe, of us and everybody. And he also draws attention to little things which we seem to miss out. And then even if we see it, we don't have the capacity to express it. So he does it for us. But at the same time, the same poet, he's a very sensitive person, and he sees life with glasses that, with a different tint, the color of which none of us can even imagine. I mean, it's not rose tinted, it's not black tinted, it's some kind of a magic color that a poet has, through which he sees that little ant having life, and he talks about it, which I haven't seen. So that is a poet. But this is what a commoner, a sadharan person like me would say. But what does Bharati say? He says, Namadu Thoril Kavidai. Naattukku உழைத்தல், இமைப்பொழுதும் சோராதிருத்தல், சிந்தையே இம்மூன்றும் செய். What he says is, my job is to write poetry and to work for the country, and for not to be tired even for a wink of an eye. So he says, do these three things. So he is so nonchalant about his genius, and he takes writing poetry as an occupation, as a job. And it's run-of-the-mill thing for him in his day-to-day life. For me, if I have to write one word with some imagination of creativity, I probably will sit and think for a year, actually. Now, and then, does everybody become a kavi? Like I just told you that I can't be a kavi. Kavidai எழுதுபவன் கவி அன்று. கவிதையே வாழ்க்கையாக உடையோன், வாழ்க்கையே கவிதையாக உடையோன், அவனே கவி. That is, the guy who writes poetry is not a poet. The one who lives his poetry as his life, and the one who writes the life as his poetry, that is the kavi as per the definition of Bharati. And as I told you, I'm Bharati's Radha, and I believe him because whatever he says is the truth. And there is no contesting to that, actually. So what he says is, ஊருக்கு நல்லது சொல்வேன், எனக்கு உண்மை தெரிந்து சொல்வேன். So that is the kind of poet Bharati was. Now, next, let's come to the next one, the Patriot. Now, who's a patriot? Once again, definition, Webster, Oxford Dictionary helps me. A patriot is one who loves his country and will protect it by all means from an enemy. And Oxford says, patriot is derived from the word pater, that is father, native land. But then for Bharati, India or Bharatanadu was not from the father. He said, Thai Tirunadu. So he has elevated the patriot to another level, a level more precious. And he is the one who fought for his country and was willing to give his life for his motherland. Janani Janma Bhumi. That is what Bharati said. Now, let's go back to Bharati, the poet and the patriot, and his legacy. Now that we have defined all three words, I'm now satisfied, de-stressed that I have defined those words, poet, legacy, and patriot. So now I can carry on with the rest of it. So since September 20th, when Bharatiya's death centennials events started, many events happened. Everybody talked about Bharati, his poetry, his philosophy, his life, and they analyzed it from all angles, from all perspectives. So that sort of made me a little ambitious. I said, today, for Colors of Glory and its members, I want to give something different. I became ambitious to give something that has not been said very expansively till now. So then at that time, when I was thinking about it, I chanced by a poem written by Bharati in English in one of the websites called Quora.com. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but I love surfing that. And there started my quest to search for his writings in English. I discovered plenty. The book, The Coming of Age, written by, edited by his great-granddaughter, Meera T. Sundararajan, I think, helped me a lot. And then, of course, we have our Google Mama. Thanks to Captain Ramchandran, who gave me quite a long time to prepare for this. I spent enough time on Google, shamelessly, because this is something that I cannot tell my husband I'm wasting my time. I said, it is for the Bharati talk. So I spent my time on Google, and I found many articles, letters, and poems thrown at me. So today, here I am, and I will take you on a journey which I discovered, through which I discovered a different style of Bharati. And let us all discover the legacy of Bharati through his English writings too. Now, why am I saying English writings? Are these English writings different from his Tamil writings? Well, at first, when I read one of the essays, I thought, oh my God, Bharati's English writings were more or less journalistic. Really? I mean, he has so much of genius in him. How could he be just journalistic writing? Then I discovered he wrote a lot of essays, letters. He wrote a lot of poems in English. He translated his own poems. Till then, I have read translations of his poems. And some or other, when I had read the Tamil ones also, but when I read the English ones, it didn't gel correct. They always lacked that spirit of Bharati in it. But some of the poems that he had translated into English were definitely Bharati. And then did he stop with writing his own poems? No. He translated poems of Namalvar, one of the Alvars of the Vaishnavism cult, of Andal, of Kulasegara Alvar, And was Vaishnavism his favorite? No, he had translated Arunagirinathas also. So, and then the most tickling thing, most enjoyable thing that I liked was he had written small stories, with a moralistic punch, like the Zen stories. They are very cute and they are very short also. You can just finish them in 5 minutes, but it makes you think for as long as a day or a year, or because they have that kind of depth in those few words. And he was also a very magnanimous man. He admired a lot of English poets and writers. He followed Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot and all, but he was very much in awe of Shelley. They even had a small little guild called Shelley Guild in Pondicherry. And for a long time, his pen name was Shelley Dasan. So this is Bharatiya in English. Now, what is different about Bharati's writings in English and in Tamil? Bharati, he wrote his prose in English was very subtle, but very satirical. He was polite and gentlemanly, yet he did not spare the subject of his sarcasm. And his contents were deep, but simply written. And I think I understood the spiritualism more in his English writings than I did from his Tamil poems. Maybe my Tamil is very bad, actually. But then his English is flawless. It's not pompous, it's not waffling, but it was precise and to the point and very powerful. And it had that goomph, that impact. It was inspiring, just like his Tamil poems and writings. His English writings were not aggressive at all. Not that kind of, the kind that you see in Tamil Kavide, தனி ஒரு மனிதனுக்கு உணவில்லை என்றால் ஜகத்தினை அழித்திடுவோம், அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை, விடுதலை விடுதலை விடுதலை. None of those aggressiveness. He was very subtle. All these flaming declarations were not there in his English writings at all. In fact, it was like Western music. There was that harmony in his writings. It flowed from one to the other, but did it lack the punch? No. When you finish reading even a paragraph of it, you feel shaken. Oh, you say, my God, where did he hide this punch? It was so sukshma, so subtle, that you didn't feel that needle entering that banana. It was like that. வாழைப்பழத்துல ஊசி ஏத்துற மாதிரின்னு சொல்றாங்களா, அந்த மாதிரி. That was the genius of Bharatiya. Since I cannot match Bharatiya's writing by any measure, by any interpretation or commentary, or reproducing anybody else's words, I decided it will be sacrilege to explain it in any other words, but in his own. So I'm going to take, there may be some few readings in this talk as we go by, because I cannot do justice to his writing in any other way than just by reading his words. So today there'll be some readings too. You will have to bear up with me. I hope I will read it as he would have written. So before I enumerate the number of, before I even go any further, let's enumerate the number of hats that Bharatiya wore in his life. He was a poet in Tamil, English. He knew so many other languages, French, Bengali, Hindi, Sanskrit. I don't know if he wrote anything else. Even today, even after Chelamal and Chelamal Bharati and the family have bequeathed everything to the government, people are coming up with little letters here and there and saying Bharati wrote this in his handwriting. So we don't know. There may be these languages. There are some works which will be unearthed by and by, and I hope they do. He wrote free verses stories, novels, columns in paper, magazines, and he was the father of journalism in Tamil. The first Tamil journalism was born under Bharati's tutelage. Like I said, he wore many hats. I would say too many hats, because, but did wearing all these hats hamper his style? No, he wore them all with great elan, with such panache. And what was he? He was a patriot. He was a nationalist. He was an internationalist. He was a humanist. He was a journalist par excellence. He was a social reformer. He was a spiritualist, a visionary, a soothsayer. He was a teacher, a strict disciplinarian. He planned everything for this nation, Apna Bharat. And as I understood from his writings, towards the end of his life, I understand that he became a yogi, almost like a siddha. And Mr. Muthiah wrote in his article, the first Tamil newspaper, he says that it was Bharati's contribution that Swadeshamitran, the first Tamil daily, became not just popular, but very successful. And Bharati was aware of the power of narrative, yet he was ethical. He wrote truthfully, no embellishments or falsification of facts. He reported news as it should be. Nevertheless, he wrote powerful editorials to drive his point. The discerning readership knew what they were getting. His papers, like he was the editor of India, first and foremost, it had red color to tell that the India is bleeding, it's enslaved, and we are angry. So he printed it on red color. And then on the first page, he had a cartoon. And on the second page, he wrote about the cartoon and, of course, his editorial. So you read the explanation for his cartoon and you find the analysis in his editorial. So this was Bharati's style of doing it. And this was originality. And being the editor, he also, he gave an era to the country of creativity, experimentation, and individuality. And the novelty to the, this novelty attracted people because the visual representation of news was something the Indian public need not have to be educated to know. India, that is the weekly paper, was so successful, it sold 4,000 copies, which was a tremendous lot for a vernacular newspaper. So you can imagine how successful it was when he was the editor of it. Now, as an editor, what all did he do? He was a cartoonist, he was the publisher, he was the editor, writing editorials with quality writings, and he presented the matter very well. And he was a great patriot and a political propagandist. You would wonder what it is, but he believed in propaganda. He said people should know about India and what is happening to them because of the Brits and how they should be roused to react. Otherwise, they were all accepting everything that's been dished out to them and they are complacent. So this is what a propagandist was doing. And all his journalistic efforts is the legacy that Bharati gave to the media, that a newspaper can be an instrument on popularizing, organizing, strengthening a political party. Now, he weaved patriotism, nationalism, development projects, his expectations from the people of India, social welfare, bhakti, spiritualism, and he condemned all social evils like caste and women's freedom and all of it. In his poetry and he brought it out in a sprint. So this set the standard for journalistic ethics and journalistic narrative. If you compare it to then and to now, don't you think all our journalists should be reading Bharatiya's style of journalism and learn a lot from there? Now, being a patriot is not different from being all of this, because for Bharatiya, patriotism, nationalism, and spirituality are all under the same umbrella, in the same basket, and they're all interwoven and interlinked. And I'll come to this nationalism and spirituality in a while, but for the moment, his political vision is separate from his social concern. He was a messiah. He wanted to deliver people from social evils. Before independence, he says, in his words, true patriotism must be spiritual. But that does not mean that differences of belief concerning the nature of the other world should be brought into the theater of secular nation building. Now, it is really spooky when you realize that the happenings around the world today is what he so appropriately described, like a soothsayer, and forewarned us a century ago. He warned us about the consequences also a century ago. He gave solutions as well, but those solutions were very simple. We just needed for us to reset our circuits of our attitudes, you know. When men bring into political life the bitterness of religious sectarianism, they commit political suicide. I think every word of Bharati weighs a kilo in gold. And all we need to do is just sit and think about it. And once we think and unravel what he means, I think we have a lesson and a legacy in every word that he had written or said. He talks about the corrupt police system. He talks about how the French and the English became strange bedfellows for territorial ambitions and for the sake of World War I. And why did he talk about it? Because it had a repercussion on the nationalists in India. A man as straightforward as Bharati, he reveals himself through his poetry and his prose. He's an open book. There are no dark corners, nor are there any reading between his lines in understanding his nature, personality, his beliefs, his hope, his convictions, his trust in humankind. And all this can be gleaned out from his literature. He did not find World War a reason to withhold any reforms in educational processes. It did not stop him from appealing to the government. Please give us education. Please give us, the industrial development, and please give us the freedom of speech and thought. And anybody would have said, okay, it is World War I, we shouldn't trouble the government. He says, no, our people have gone, and as far as World War is concerned, it is going on, but let us also live, because living is essential to the subsistence of Bharat Mata. He was all the time focused on his country. And that is a legacy that I think the youth of India should get ingrained into every cell of theirs. He's a very compassionate gentleman, which defies the, when you see him in the posters and you see that turban, very piercing eyes and that mustache, you think he's one grim person who is an angry young man. But he had a very soft, gentle heart. The same heart which would feed the sparrows from the rice that Chelaman had begged and brought to feed her children. But he had a heart large enough to feed those sparrows. That is the compassion he had. He will talk to the dogs. He will talk to the kurvi, the quail, And he even would carry a baby donkey and dance with it. That's the kind of man Bharati was. And he would tell in his Papa Patil, அண்டி பிழைக்கும் நம்மை ஆடு இவை ஆதரிக்க வேண்டுமடி பாப்பா உயிர்களிடத்தில் அன்பு வேண்டும் பாப்பா. So that is the compassion and karunai that Bharati had for people. But I don't know if at that time anybody, the outside world, the Brits at least, thought of him as a terrorist and an extremist, and they considered him as a very harsh man. While in his writings, as you keep reading, you discover that he condemns all acts of violence, even for nationalistic causes. And I would say he was more a Gandhian and in his non-violent stand. And but it doesn't mean that he did not encourage protests and rallies and things like that. He believed in passive resistance, and he wanted to use that. He said Indians are very good at it, and you should put that to strength and use that as a tool. And but he was against all kinds of violence, like bombing and all. Was he always like this? No. Actually, he had a change of heart, and when he went to Surat, they formed an extremist kind of split from Congress, and he brought in people to make bombs. But then he had the good fortune of meeting Sister Nivedita in Calcutta, and when he met her, everything changed about him. He became very soft, gentle, and he started looking at non-violence thereafter. But history was not kind to him at all. History was very unkind. And even take the story of Vanchinathan. Even Captain Ramachandran wrote about the story of Vanchinathan in the CoG blog, actually, wherein he says that when Vanchinathan shot the collector Ash in front of his wife, and they wanted to arrest Bharati because they thought he was a co-conspirator. Whereas Bharati says very clearly in his writings that he was innocent and he had nothing to do with it. And he calls this Vanchinathan exercise a big accident, a very tragic accident. Tragic because he says Vanchinathan shot himself and left no trails. So nobody knew who were his conspirators. But he says it's a pathetic incident because even according to the Hindu religion, nobody should do this when a woman or the wife is present. And he says it's against all the beliefs that the Hindus had. And he says Vanchinathan did a very wrong thing. But then, but it got him caught into the snare of the police, because the police drew a blank everywhere. They arrested a lot of people, but then when they went to the trials, they were all absolved and acquitted. So the police didn't know what to do, but the Britishers were very touchy and twitchy. They were scared of their future, and they wanted a scapegoat. And they were gunning for nationalists like VVS Iyer and Bharatiya. And this was causing a lot of trouble to Bharatiya. Why am I recounting these stories? Are they linked with the legacy? Yes. Legacy is also about lessons learned. Compare it with the present day scenario, where people are wrongly accused and they are taken into jails with these under these acts. And what do? They probably feel as Bharatiya did actually in those days. And this is a lesson that Bharatiya learned eventually, and so much so that he started negotiating with the Brits. And why is this a legacy? Because the lesson here is you can do things with negotiations also in a democratic manner, and not necessarily when you're young, we all do things which are in a very extremist manner, but he realized that he can do it in a democratic manner also. He still wrote fiery things in Sudesmitran, but he was no longer a threat to the Brits after that. So this is a lesson he learned, and I feel it is as good a legacy as if you would read books of his, actually. Now, at this point, I want to just talk about his humor. His humor was so inevitable. You know, he had the joy for life and he was fearless. And his humor ranges from simple haha to mockery to sarcasm, satire, parody, irony. They filled his writings. You know, when Mrs. Kennedy, there was a lady called Mrs. Kennedy somewhere in the north, a bomb was thrown at her and it missed her, of course. But he was talking about this story, and he says, how wise it would have been on the part of the British if they had adopted a policy of clear-sightedness, of justice, of humanity. Had they just punished the actual perpetrators and left things alone, the subsequent history of India would have run on lines much more favorable to the British. But fate had ordained otherwise, which means we would have been still be ruled by British had they done that. So see how slowly he has inserted the needle into the banana. And then there was the time when VAOC, you know, the Chidambaram Pillai, when his steam navigation company, there is a sessions judge in Tinelveli called Mr. Pinay. He sentenced VAOC to transportation of life twice, so to say, as the people accustomed to the Indian transmigration theory jokingly said, for 2 lives. That is, this life and the next birth. So Bharati makes fun of him. Consequently, the judge had to, you know, emphasize, and he says he sentenced him for 2 lives. Okay. And then he writes about many things like, you must read his Kakai Parliament and The Fox with the Golden Tail. All these are excellent reading material for his humor. See, nothing that Bharati writes is for one thing. Like, it's not just for the beauty of nature or just for the beauty of the person or for bhakti. Even if he's talking, if he's worshipping Goddess Saraswati, there is something about nation development. There is something about building schools, building factories, everything in his bhakti song. Or if he's describing Kannamma and saying your eyes are so beautiful, even in that there is a spiritualistic angle to it. So Bharati doesn't write single purposedly or single focus. Everything is one big atmosphere for him. You know, that is the environment Bharati lived, actually. And Bharati asks us to read about history. And in his own Saritram, I've explained to you about, you know, Vanchinathan, where he had to suffer. And that is when he says, this Brits, you know, we are all post-independence born people. At least I am. And we don't realize what it was to be repressed. He says the British had only one motto: repress, imprison, deport, and hang. I cannot imagine living in an environment like that. And no wonder Bharati's writings are all so spirited and with so much of energy in it. And Bharati also believes in the spiritual power. When the Tsars were overthrown by the Russian people, he prayed for them. He prayed for the fall of Tsar. He said that is the spiritual power that the Russian Revolution is all about. And then he also says, he praises our soldiers about going to World War I. And he says this should give, in fact, there is one particular sentence. If you give me the time, I will read it out for you. He says, war comes and the family sends its finest fellows to the front. Of course, the hearts of those who remain are full of mingled feelings of pride and satisfaction, pain and apprehension. India sacrifices for the defense of the imperial household, where she has so far been the eldest and most dutiful, but not the favorite daughter-in-law. You know, even in a serious situation like that, he has that temerity to introduce humor, but in a very effectful manner. India, with her intense passion for peace, born of the series of war pests which had been her lot, almost uninterruptedly for long centuries together, will naturally be ready to sacrifice herself for assuring peace. You know, this particular thing is bringing the present situation where we are hounded by the countries in the world to take sides and leave our principles for peace aside and take a stand. And when I saw our foreign minister saying that India stands for peace, I was so proud that he is living the words of Bharati. And these are the legacies. Probably the foreign minister or the prime minister has read Bharati extensively, or it is in their innate characteristic that civilization brings this assurance of peace to our country, and that is what India wants, whatever the situation be, whoever may be standing on our head. Then I will move on to the most important of all is his magnanimity. He appreciates greatness in others. He ticks off the journalists in our country at that time because they failed to report Tagore's visit to Japan. And he says you should appreciate the contagion of greatness and be proud of our country. And you should set the narrative. I think this is the legacy that the journalists of the fourth estate should follow now. And here we take sides and we say that we will not talk about this, or appreciation for people of India is a common thing, and the genuine genius should be appreciated, whatever stance they may have. So this is what the great bard, the national bard, has written in his writings. And he also says that the country doesn't require a reformation. It wants a revival. And what kind of a revival? He says it should revive the ancient virtues, the ancient character, the ancient dharma. But does it mean that he wants us to go retro? No. He says, in his Atichudi, he says, Vedam Pudumai say. He doesn't say you read the Vedas and follow it like that. According to the present day dynamics, you try and make the Vedathala Pudumai say, and you bring it to the contemporary usage of it and get the essence of the Vedas and practice it. That's what he says. And the quality, he says, you need a revival of the qualities of fearlessness, of self-denial for public good, of self-sacrifice, of love of the country. He says, bring that revival of love of the country. Vayya Talamaikol, that is, be the head of all nations in the world. He says, revive the originality of thought, of conception, of spontaneous actions, not stimulated from outside. You know, just because Americans have told us, so-and-so have told us, don't do things like that. Bring in your own originality. Do what you have to do. And you dare to execute the responsibilities that as an Indian that you need to do. This is the revival of the national will, he says. You know, in today's scenario, America arms nations with weapons while instigating wars for its economic sustenance. Europe hoards vaccines selfishly. But what does India do? India helps poorer nations with vaccines, and it helps them with food in their time of need. This is what the revival that Bharati wanted. This is the legacy that we have been bequeathed with. And don't you think? I'm sure you all agree with me on this, actually. And does it mean that he wants only the old type of traditional classical thinking? No, he wants scientific progress as well. ஆயுதம் செய்வோம், நல்ல காகிதம் செய்வோம், ஆலைகள் வைப்போம், கல்வி சாலைகள் வைப்போம், வானை அளப்போம், கடல் மீனை அளப்போம். That is, let's do weapons, let's do good paper, let's make industry flourish, and then let's measure the space, and let's count the fish in the do oceanography. Chandra mandalathukor Chandala mandalathil iyal kandukalipom. Let us find life in moon. That is what he wanted. He wants innovation. He wants the science to progress. Bharati, he believed in the power of good. The only power in the universe he believed was the goodness, the truth. And he says evil does not exist. It only appears. And it is the absence. What is evil? Evil is the absence of good. Like disease is the absence of health, and darkness is the absence of light. So he says, if you're dissatisfied with negativity, bring the light. This is what Swami Vivekananda also said. Bring in the light. Let in the light. In most of his talks, Vivekananda says, bring in the light. So when you bring, Bharati says, when you bring in the light, where is this fearful, hateful darkness be? It'll be nowhere. He says, bring positive knowledge and chase away the ignorance. Actually, I want to say this particular thing. He has a formula for positivity for politicians also. He says, a politician does not kill forces of evil nor weaken opponents, oppressors. A good politician, he introduces and nurtures the forces of good, organizes, strengthens, vitalizes the oppressed. He gives strength to his people, preaches to them unity. He gives them noble strengthening goals. Does it sound like utopia? I don't know. Maybe we are in this process of achieving all of this through our politicians. I feel there is hope for India, I think. Now, I want to talk about the last, but not the least. I want to talk about the greatest legacy that Bharatiya gave to the peoples of India. That is fearlessness. Achamillai, achamillai, achamenbadillaiye. And he says, even if the sky falls on your head, don't be afraid. That is what he said. How is he able to say this? Where did he get this fearlessness from? He himself says in one of his poems, he who knows the joy of Brahman, he fears not, he fears never. And he says, the spirituality is actually an attitude of human mind, which believes in the, if you do the right things, then you don't have to fear anybody. And that is spirituality. Every patriotic program, if you do it unhesitatingly, uncalculatingly, and not expecting returns, material returns, he is an earnest patriot, Bharatiya says. So I believe, I'm continuing Bharatiya's words. I believe it to be true that India alone possesses elements of a true balanced civilization, and that it is her great mission to develop such civilization not for herself alone, but as an exemplar for all nations. Such a civilization should be based upon the perception of the seen material world and the unseen spiritual world. What he actually says is, make money, develop, get industries, and be prosperous. At the same time, be spiritually grounded and do the right virtuous things, the righteous things. Don't do unethical and things that will cause for the sake of greed or envy or jealousy or for power or authority. That's what he means in this. He created a paper called Bharatiya in English when he was in Pondicherry, and the objective of this was to reconstruct Indian nationality on the basis of Indian spirituality. And he calls India as the Jnana Bhumi. And he actually in his he had written a series of essays, small ones, not more than a page, on thoughts. And as he goes from thought 1 to thought 8 or 9, he starts expanding on his discovery. And ultimately he comes to say, I am God. He realizes that he is the soul, Aham Brahmasmi and Tattvamasi. And then ultimately he says that, my body and my mind are different from me. My body was created and my mind was created as a tool for my Atma and for manifesting this Atma. So because they are my tools, I love them. I take care of them. And this is Vivekananda adds on to this by saying, if Tattvamasi, if I am that, okay, if I am that, I'm certainly great, right? I mean, I'm not an ordinary chap. If I am Atma, I'm a great chap because Atma is pure. And he says, I'm certain that I would be very, very, I'll be able to dare and do everything in a worldly sense also because I am the Atma. So he says, since he doesn't fear death, he has no fear for anything, anybody, any situation, nothing, not even his poverty. That is where his fearlessness came from. And that is the legacy. When I was, say, a decade younger, I wouldn't have understood it. But today I can understand where he is going. Like he separates, when he separates his body and mind from his soul, and he also doesn't have fear, which is the basic foundation of the Indian belief. And there is one guy called Philip Phelps from New York who writes, when the Western philosophy, where it's all Bogabhumi, they will eventually turn to India because you have the richest treasure of spirituality, of believing in this, and you do the correct things the righteous way, which will stand the test of time forever and ever, and you will be the leader of all nations in days to come. So when this fear of death is overcome, there's only joy. Then he talks about the sun, the moon, everybody, and the bliss. He sees bliss in everything, and he admires all creations. And what he tells, he leaves with, in some of it, he gives advice. Normally, he doesn't give advice in any of he orders people to do, or he just tells what he feels. But he has words of wisdom for youth also, where he says, do your duty. And many claim rights without doing duty. He says, duty and rights they go hand in hand. If you have one and don't have the other, this doesn't work. So it has to be duty and rights together. If you do your duty, you get your rights. If you demand for your rights, you have to do your duty. That is his words for that. And he also is a family man. And what he says is, like today I was listening to Shashi Tharoor talking about nationalism and he says nationalism is investigated community kind of thing. But then Bharatiya had said it long ago. He said, India has to learn what is true family feeling and conventions of society feeling and conventions and political ones. The object of a Samaj, of each family, is to train children true to the Samaj and offer themselves to the city and nation. The family is the school of the Samaj. The city is the school of the nation. Life is the school of sannyas. In all of these things, the larger reacts with the smaller. So if you do one, it sort of magnifies and becomes the larger amalgam. And one of the essentials of civic life is that we must have an instinctive and habitual way of regarding men as human. And we also should know that they are capable of nobility and greatness just as we have. And he also he says, please go on a pilgrimage. Like you will discover religion only when you go on pilgrimage. You will discover India when you go on a pilgrimage of seeing the various regions. And his dream of free India is having the different regions of the country living happily together, sharing resources. Gangai Nadipurathu Godumai Pandam, Kaveri Vetrilaikku Maru Kollom. Not fight for Kaveri water and things like that. So in conclusion, Bharati had a vision of a prophet. He had the equanimity of a saint, and he had the dreams of a patriot, aspirations of a social reformer. His predictions and warnings are coming true. It came true then also, it's still coming true. He loved India and Tamil with a passion. He was proud of his cultural heritage. And the man, he said, was an infinite dreamer, dreaming finite dreams. Let it be real dreams, he says. And this brings us to our president, Abdul Kalam, who said, let the dreams it should not let you sleep, actually. And I would just like to read that poem, which got me into Bharatiya's English writings, just a few lines of it, and that will make me happy. Where there is a will, there is a way. But, oh heavens, where is the way to get a will? Instinct replies, in thyself. Yes, in myself, in myself, in myself. I will that I develop a powerful will. I have willed it. I have willed that I will achieve. I have will to do anything. I will, I will, I will. Will is my mantra. I will be strong. I will grow in strength. I will age into youth. I will work for power and greatness. I will achieve glory. That is, he is promising himself. And then he promises others, I will annihilate the miseries of mankind. I will make mankind happier. I will make the world better. I will wed truth and power. All I ask, oh heavens, give me that, grant unto me the truth and power. Then it goes on and on where he says, I will toil, I will work, and then I will succeed. And when I succeed, I will channel my successes into a code, into into my glory. And this is how he finishes: success, 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 I succeed. I think this, there in Tamil, there is a song he wrote, Olipadai Takkaninai va va va, kind of thing. And I feel this poem is, it has the same impact and same energy and the same spirit as that, but it has a deeper meaning where he has played. It also shows the genius of the man with the language, English language, which was alien to him. And Bharati believed that India would lead the world in many respects, for it had the spiritual strength necessary for leadership, and it possessed great qualities as a nation. I would like to leave us all with this last word of Bharati, that we have leadership and we have the qualities of a great nation, and we have the spiritual strength to take it along. And for this, it was his poetry which was the instrument in this war against all odds, all negativities. And I would only would like to just say what is so great about Bharati, what is this legacy. I would like to quote his wife, who says, she herself is quoting Bharati. Chelamal Bharati is saying, Vinduraika Matada Vindayada. That is, he is such a miracle. His own poetry says that he's a miracle that cannot be expressed. And that is how I feel today, talking about him, that he's a miracle. He's earlier I had said that I was his Radha, but he has gone into my mitochondria, to my cells. And I'm sure I won't be able to see him in the next, when I leave this world, because he would have attained nirvana, and there is no chance of me getting that. So there is no chance of meeting him in any other births. But my legacy is, I will carry Bharati in my genes for the many births that I will take, and that will stay in good stead for me. And at this juncture, I would like to conclude with an appeal. I mean, it always hurt me that Bharati was never given an award. You know, I don't know if it is too late to give a Bharat Ratna or not, but he deserves a higher award than Bharat Ratna, if there could be any. But is it too late to give him some award? I hope it reaches the ears of the government. But then what we can do is what Kannadasan said. I will read it out in Tamil. Kalattal avan kalvettayinan. He became an inscription in time. Kannit Tamil avan kavalil vazhndhathu. That is, the Virgin Tamil was protected by him. It lived with his protection. Anbu Tamile Annai Bharadame. Inba kavinyanai ennuai nidame. He's saying, please remember him every day. Like the Kaviyars has suggested, the least every one of us can pay homage to this patriotic poet, whose life mission was to propagate love for Janmabhoomi or our Mathrubhumi, is by reading, understanding at least one poem every day. Poem or essay or letter or whatever of his writing every day. Application of what he said comes automatically. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob Shobha. Yeah, I mean, you have outdone yourself. I mean, for much more, you know, I mean, far, far beyond my expectations as well. Absolutely great. Ladies and gentlemen, being a memorial talk, we normally don't have a question answer session, but since she's one of us, and on an informal basis, if you would like to sort of have some mild interactions and don't come with too many questions, she's already been talking for quite some time. So you may would like to.
25.
Sir, Madam has told she was happy on 2 accounts. She has not told what are the 2 accounts. Today.
Sir, I'm honored to be delivering this Muthiah Memorial Lecture, because Mr. Muthiah is very dear to me. I respect him a lot, and I'm in awe of him. And it is really my honor to deliver his memorial lecture. That's one. Number 2 is Mahakavi Bharatiya. I mean, if I'm a doctor, they say 21% of the air is oxygen. And I think he's that 1% which is mixed with my oxygen, which I breathe in and breathe out every day. And I couldn't have asked for a bigger honor than talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
Parvati and Ranjani, I think Ranjani, I saw you only letter. I'm happy you're here. Parvati, would you like to say something, or Ranjini, either of you?
Yeah. Nice.
Captain Ramachandran, thank you for having these memorial lectures. I think it's wonderful that you're having it every year and that we're able to attend it. And Dr. Varthaman, thank you for a very entertaining lecture.
So, Dr. Shobha, I still remember, you know, I think it was the last year before Dad passed away, and you know, the whole thing with Abhinandan was going on, and the first thing Dad said was, "Oh, Dr. Shobha, she is, you know, she is the expert on Tamil Jains in, you know, as opposed to she's she's Abhinandan's mother." So, you know, he recognized you for your knowledge on the subject as well. So, you know, he had very high memories of you, I think. So, yeah. So, and you know, he was very appreciative of all the things that Colors of Glory was doing as well. So, yeah, and interesting, Mahakavi Bharati, we didn't take Tamil in school. My second language was Hindi. So Mahakavi Bharati is something that was introduced to us later. And actually more recently, because the kids learn it at school. The kids actually take, in Singapore, the kids have to take Tamil as their mother tongue. So, but what was interesting is I didn't realize he actually wrote in English as well. So that was, you know, that's one of the things I take away from this. You know, I need to go and look up Google Mama now and find out how much he's written in English. So thank you for that, and thank you for the very entertaining lecture on him.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think my uncle's on as well.
Dr. Mr. Nagarajan, I mean, he must be here.
Yeah,
Right,
he is. He's on. He's on. I think he may have. He's dialed in from his iPhone, and he may be. Yeah.
Because, I mean,
Okay.
he is,
Go ahead.
Nice presentation, Shobha.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Ashok.
Yeah, actually both of us were brought up in the same neighborhood that Bharatiya lived, which is Triplicate. So I have a lot of memories of it. And to me personally, I think he tapped into the emotional energy of all Tamils, in fact, all Indians. Okay, but the thing that I would say was his biggest legacy was those timeless two verses which he said, you know, you know, there's so much of philosophy, intensity in that, in the sense, if you simplify it, you know, it says, what's the use of God, religion, you know, governments, technology, if a man cannot have 1 square meal to eat in a day, you know? That is the message I think he gave to the world. There's no use of anything that you do, right, if your people are starving. You know, that's to me personally was the greatest message that he delivered to the world. Thank you. Anyway, nice presentation, Shobha. Quite enjoyed it.
Thank you.
yeah, Sundar, you have given me a lot of inputs. Would you like to say something?
I definitely, sir. First of all, thanks to ma'am for an entirely riveting lecture. It brought Mahakavi Bharati live before my eyes. And if I may add something, because Mahakavi Bharati is very close to my family. My great-grandfather, who was Somasundara Bharatiyar, and Mahakavi Bharati were neighbors in Yetiyapuram. And Yetiyapuram was the Zameen or the princely state from where both of them got their name Bharati. So if I could share a little more, if it's okay, sir, then I will go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are three versions as to how this Bharati title was conferred upon them. The first they say is that there was a Siddha medicine practitioner who was walking into Etiapuram, and there were a lot of kids who are playing there. And when he asked some of the children some directions, he was very impressed by two of the children. One of them was Subramanian, and the other was Somasundara Bharati, both of them same age and contemporaries. And then he was so impressed, he said, I've come here to ask the Etiapuram Jameen, that is what the Pindali state was called, that I want to hold a Tamil poetry competition. Looking at these children giving out such, flawless Tamil, he, I believe, invited them for the competition. And the competition was a verse called Nerisai Venba, which is a very difficult verse. And in the evening, when the competition was held, these two children outdid all the other poets. And therefore, the title Bharati was given to them, which has been carried on by the family name. And my great-grandfather was Somasundara Bharatiyar, who lived next door to Mahakavi Bharatiyar. Subramania Bharatiyar and my great-grandfather were neighbors and very good friends. So that was one version. The second version was there were a lot of Tamil scholars in Jaffna. So these Tamil scholars in Jaffna, when they came, were so impressed that they bestowed this title. And this is given in, this book magazine, which comes in page 26. That's my dad, who's 96 years, and gave me a lot of information because he has met them. So in this book, it says that Tamil scholars gave it to them. The third version, which my father, who's 96 years old and alive, tells me is it was conferred to both of them in MBT College in Tirunelveli. Now, even the historians are not able to interpret which is the correct version. But one thing history is totally agreed upon is both Somasundara Bharatiyar, my great-grandfather, and Mahakavi Subramania Bharatiyar were conferred this title at the same time, and it is carried on as the family name. I don't bear the family name because I decided to have my own name. So that is as far as the legacy is concerned. Now, if I can share a little more of the brilliant talk by ma'am, in which 2 or 3 words which he said brought this man alive, because a lot of stories have been told to me about my grandmother, who's no more, who has seen Mahakavi Bharati. 2 aspects to him. The first is, ma'am had said that he had that Gambiram, ordering people, So one of the aspects of Mahakavi Bharati was they were a little poor in the sense that he was a man lost himself and in his poetry. Therefore, he did not have much time for money making, and most of the time his family was a little poor. I think this is known for the people, who read history. And once, I believe, a little rice his wife had borrowed and kept it so that she could cook it. And when Mahakavi Bharati went home, he found a lot of sparrows and birds. And he said, these birds are in need, and he just, fed it to the birds. So this was the kind of man who was totally lost in himself. And that man came out very, very clearly that he had this soft and gentle heart. And about his ordering people, since both he and my great-grandfather were same age and very good friends and Tamil scholars, he used to just walk into the house and tell my grandmother, who was young that time, Lakshmi, Palaya Soru, he was very fond of this Palaya Soru and Sundakari, and then order Sundakari, etc. And then, with great relish, have it there with Gambiram and then go, because they were such good friends. So that was the other aspect of the soft and the gentle heart. And the other thing, that famous song of his, Achamillai, Achamillai, Achamendadillaye, Uchimidu Vanidin the Viligindra Bodilum, Achamillai, Achamillai, Achamendadillaye. Very beautifully it had been brought out by ma'am that he had the spiritualism in him, which said that I am not afraid of anything. But this aspect of his not eating also, this words also is there in that particular poem, which says, Pichai vangi unnum valke petru vitta bodilum. Pichai vangi unnum valke petru vitta bodilum. Even if I have to beg and I have to eat, even then I am not afraid of anything. So he did not look after his family intentionally. That was the kind of man he was, because he said that the world will look after, and he was so engrossed in himself as Mahakavi Bharati was. And he came to Swadesh Mitran, wrote so many articles. Ma'am brought out very, very well that Shelley Dawson was the nickname under which he wrote. I have read many poems of articles of his as Shelley Dawson. So I thought I will share, these couple of things which my grandmother had told me. Half an hour back, I rang up my mother, who's now 86, keeping fairly good health, thanks to God, and got a little inputs, so that I thought I could share a little bit of Mahakavi Bharati, the man that he was. Now, to link the past with the present, the families, because of the forces, have drifted apart. But when I spoke to my mom, she said about 10 years back, two of Mahakavi's daughters, I believe, are in Chennai. One of them, she spoke to them, who lives in Ananagar in T block, where my parents stay. And I believe the other daughter stays somewhere near Kumaran Silks in T Nagar. And whenever they used to go to purchase saris, they used to, drop in. But however, this I have to verify, and I will definitely take it up again to see if this generation again we could meet again. So I wanted to share this of Mahakavi Bharati as a man, as to what it was, a fiery poet. Like ma'am said, those piercing eyes and other things, held a gentle heart, a man who was a nationalist, a poet, and who lived and breathed for India. The other thing is, he died fairly young, which added to, that image of him. He was unfortunately trampled by mistake by an elephant in the temple. And a year or year and a half after that, I think in his mid-30s, Mahakavi Bharati passed away, because he never really recovered after he had been trampled by the temple. So I thought these few vignettes which I had gathered as the man of Mahakavi Bharati, I would share with all of you, and also proud of the lineage that I have been able to be associated with him in some way or the other. So this is what I wanted to share. I hope I have not taken up too much of your time and been able to add a little bit to the brilliant talk that ma'am has given. Thank you.
Thank you, Sundar. So I think we are running out of time, and we are now. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Shobha. This was you really made the evening.
Captain Ramchandran, sir, can I just?
Yeah, please. I was going to ask you, would you like to add? Would you like to add something?
Actually, I forgot to thank you at the end of it. I worked myself up with Bharatiya, and I ended with a Jai Hind. But I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and for making me go on this journey in English with Bharati and talk about him. And as we were talking about vignettes, yesterday I was talking to Brigadier Ramachandran, who also lived in Triplicane as I did in my childhood. And he said in Car Street, when Bharati would walk down the street, people used to come and pour water on their thinnai, so that he would not sit on the thinnai and talk to them. He was ostracized so badly. And these are the, humiliations that Bharati suffered. But the poet that he was, the Jnani that he was, the Siddha that he was beyond acknowledging all these things. And it did not scratch even a bit on him. And when I heard it, it had been working on my mind. But then I knew he was a blessed soul, and it wouldn't have hurt him as much as it's hurting a poor soul like me. But I will get out of it. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And as I told one Mr. Subramaniam, this was a double whammy for me. Remembering Mr. Muthiah and remembering Bharati, my Janma Savalyamai. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyway, Bharati is right in English is news for me too. I will also look up, Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time to close. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending this annual event. Parvati and Ranjini, especially, thanks to you both for not missing it. Thank you once again, Dr. Shobha. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, all of you for attending. Just if you would wait for a couple of minutes, I'll just play the National Anthem as per our format and close the event. please sit steady while I play the National Anthem, because we cannot stand up possibly.
I can stand.
No. Don't be able to see.
Bharata Bhagya Vidata Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga
Vindhya Himachala
Yamuna Ganga Jala Siddharanga Tava Shubha Name Gahe Tava Shubha Ashish Mahe Gahe Tava Jaya Gata Bharata Bhagya Vidata Jai 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 Jai
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sign
So,
off. Get up. Then you can come on.
wonderful. See you all next year.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Night, everybody.